be presented with new IRS tax tables early in the new year. And by February, we are told, be ready to spit out what would be a tax or a net tax cut for you. The question is how much, but a lot of that has to do with redoing W-4s. Those things you fill out to write down the number of exemptions you have. Chances are you're going to be issued a new one and you'll have to sort of redo that, then file that with your boss and then wait for that tax credit. So it's not just sort of a 1, 2, 3 step process here. To the National Taxpayer Union's Mattie Duppler, that alone could be an involved process, you know?
Yeah, Neil, what you laid out there is so important. The implementation of this bill needs to be immediate. And you've already heard the president talk about taxpayers getting relief in their taxes starting in February. And that means Treasury needs to move on this as soon as it is passed into law. So Treasury issues guidance on the new withholding tables, and then it's up to the payroll companies to implement those changes into their payroll systems for that to start showing up in people's paychecks. And you mentioned, too, that employees really need to fill out their new W-4s. This is a good reminder maybe for all your viewers that if they've had a life event like getting married, having a baby, to make sure that that information is updated on their W-4, but as well as moving into this next phase with a new tax system. The child tax credit is really important with this tax system, the tax changes in this bill. So taxpayers need to make sure that they're able to take advantage of that tax credit by making sure the right information is on file with their employer. That's
a very good point, too, because a lot of people forget that a lot of the exemptions that used to be allowed will not be allowed. We'll get to the sort of the fine details of this. Keep in mind it's better than 500 pages. So some of that might just have to be started from scratch by every American worker submitting a new W-4. Maybe not, but if that were the case, that is potentially going to delay people seeing that tax cut, right?
Well, and listen, I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea. This tax bill is going to massively increase simplification in the tax code. So filling out that W-4 is going to be a lot easier than trying to figure out your tax liability at the end of the year.
That's a very good point. People hate it, you know. It's like, oh my gosh, what do I got to do? But some of these are on automatic. But I'm told, I don't know if this is true or not, Mattie, that whatever W-4 you have on file with your company now, you will have to resubmit one in the new year, or at least work on one now for the new year.
That may be something that depends on your HR department, but I certainly think that all HR departments and all companies should take a proactive approach here. They should be making sure that their employees know that they need to have an accurate W-4 for these tax changes to take effect. And moving into the next year, I think it's really important that Americans see this relief show up in their paychecks immediately. The opposition to the tax bill is not going to change. It might just get louder moving into an election year. So Republicans need to be able to show the impact of this pro-growth policy, which I believe will be huge. But unless people are seeing it in their take-home pay every pay period, they'll have a right to be skeptical. So it really makes sense for Republicans to make sure that they're making their employers in their districts aware that this is their responsibility, that Treasury is moving quickly to implement these new rules, and to make sure that Americans can see that tax relief that's been promised to them.
Yeah, you can't boop around about it. I think you're very right about that. That the one thing that we learned from Ronald Reagan, certainly in his first tax cut, it had this sort of delayed gratification. And that cost Republicans a lot of seats in the midterms. Now, obviously, things quickly turned around. And, of course, he went on for re-election in a landslide. But it can take a while, right?
Right, and the opposite is true for the Bush tax cuts. That lesson was learned there, that if you immediately change the withholding tables, people start to see dividends on the tax relief plan, which is really important. So I think that moving forward, I mean, even as early as next week, even though we're running into the holiday season and there's going to be a lot going on in people's personal lives, employers really do need to take a look at this and make sure their employees have the right information on file so the tax relief can be delivered starting next year.
Mattie, words to live by. Thank you very much. Good seeing you.
Good to see you, too.
All right, in the meantime, there's not only